Monica. Let's see. Oh, as usual. There we go. Woohoo! So I see Monica. Hi from cold Santa Monica. No, Santa Monica is a different place. Monica says, hi from cold Santa Barbara. Next week, Monique gets to be first because Monica will be in Georgia enjoying family, so she'll have to catch the replay. Okay. And Monique says, hello. All right. So I wasn't really sure what I was going to do today. And then I thought, hey, you know what? I wanted to try this like paper plate yarny craft that might be really fun for Thanksgiving or just like the fall season or whatever. And just a fun way to use some of your scraps. So I grabbed a bunch of paper plates and I was like, hey, what happens when you iron one of these cheap paper plates? Like, I definitely used the cheap kind, and you can kind of iron them basically flat, which was fun. And then you need to cut them out so that there's an uneven number of little points, okay? If they're totally straight, like these are almost totally straight, then your little basket that you're going to make will go straight up. And if they're a little flared at the end, then the basket will flare out a little bit. So first I wanted to make a fun little bottom, and I'm kind of getting going right away with this because I don't know that there's really quite enough time to do a whole thing. So for the fun little bottom, I'm just kind of wrapping it around the back and then wrapping it around one of these like petals and then going down through the middle. I made a hole in the middle, okay? So you want to go just like down through the middle. I kind of wrapped it around a few of the petals first. But if you want to make sure that everything meets in the center, which you kind of do, using that center hole is a good plan. So here's the front, and I'm just kind of going through this center. And I just used like a slip knot tied around. It's like I looped the yarn around one of the petals and used a slip knot tied around the yarn to join it because we're not going to see that. We're going to actually make, for the bottom of this little basket, we're going to do the embroidery rose stitch. So I figured I'd get that going while everybody's kind of showing up here, because you can also, the little embroidery rose stitch you can do on the bottom, or you can just like hot glue yarn in a spiral on the bottom. You can not put anything on the bottom. You can put a pretty piece of scrapbook paper on the bottom, a piece of cork, I don't know, whatever you want. The point is you need to have an uneven number, and in the end you'll have an uneven number of spokes going in, right? So we'll start counting on this one. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have an uneven number of spokes. And then what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of, because I need to get back to the front. Excuse me. So I should have been coming up through the back. So I'm just, excuse me. I'm just wrapping around one of my pieces here and then pulling back through, since I should have been coming up from the bottom instead of down from the top, because I need to end up on the top, what we're going to see inside the basket, right? And now for that rose stitch that we're going to put on the bottom of our basket, it's really easy. You're just doing an over and under. This is why you need to have an uneven number, because if you have an even number, you'll keep going over and under the same stitches. And this, you want to go over, under, and you want those overs and unders to change when you get back to the same spoke. So I'm just going to go under one, over the next, under one, over the next, under one, and pull it. See, and this is what we're going to be doing while we're waiting for everybody to kind of show up. So now we're on over, under, and pull. Over, under, and pull. So we're just going to keep doing that around and around. You're going to do that until you get to the point where you've cut. So what I did for cutting, and I got my little, I wanted my cut end here to be under. There we go, to hide underneath there. What I did for cutting my paper plate was I first ironed the paper plate, and then I found the center of the plate. You can see this is the one I marked. All right, so I found the center of the plate and marked that. And then what I did was I actually counted the little foldy things here, and I figured out what like 1/9 was. However you want to do it, you just need to figure out an odd number. I would say 5, 7, or 9. The smaller number you use, the wider your pieces that you're going to weave around will be. So I kind of divided the plate into 9. So what I did was I counted how many of the little divots are in around the plate and divided it by 9. And then which ended up being like 6.5. So at every like 6.5, I put a little dot. Okay, and you see the dot is in the center of the part I cut out, because what I did was I put a little dot at every 6.5 little divots, and then I drew that line. I connected my ruler from the dot to the center of the plate, and I drew the line down to 3 inches from the outside of the plate. So you want to make sure that you have an evenly spaced odd number of marks. So I had 9 marks spaced evenly around my paper plate, and I marked the center. And then I drew a line from each of those marks to the center, stopping at 3 inches, and I just put a little line there so I knew that's exactly where I stopped, right? And then what I did, so I had, you can see there was the little, there's that line that I drew down. It's in the center of this piece that I cut out. So then what I did was I decided how wide I wanted each of these to be. And I was like, you know what? I want them each to be about 3 wide. But you decide how wide you want it to be, and you make it that wide in the center of, in between your lines. Okay, so like these pieces were here, and if the lines went up to like here and here, and I wanted a piece that was like 1.25 inches, I'd find the 1.25 inches in the center of that little wedge, and I draw that line down to that 3-inch mark, and then do the same thing all the way around, so that all the way around I have from my 3-inch mark up, and this space at the top is about 1.25 inches. It's about 1 inch down here and about 1.25 inches up here, which means my little bowl thing is going to come out a tiny, tiny bit, but not a lot. Right? So I did that, and then I cut out all those wedges, and I actually stacked up like 3 or 4 plates. I stacked up 4 plates and just cut them all out at once. Because, you know, paper plates aren't all that sturdy, so you can cut through like 4 of them at once. And so then you have a bunch that you can do. And you can do these like if you have kids on Thanksgiving Day who are bored or whatever, they can do this, or you can just do it for your own decoration, just for fun. It can be a fun little craft to do when you have kids over. I think even teens would like this. I mean, I think it's kind of fun myself. So all I'm doing now, because I connected those spokes, well, we're still, let's see, 12:09. Cool. So we're getting there. I'm not going to finish this little rose, the rose bottom on this one. It's definitely a lot easier to do before you start doing the sides, but I don't want to make you sit here forever while I'm doing the little rose stitch bottom. So this is like an embroidery rose stitch, and for those of you who weren't here right at the beginning, there was a center hole in this plate, and I just wrapped my 9 spokes. There needs to be an uneven number. And now I'm just going around and around, going over, under, and because there's an uneven number, as I hit a spoke the second time, if it went under once, the next time I hit it, I'll go over. The next time I hit it, I'll go under. And that's why this works, because there's an uneven number of them. If you have an even number, it will not work. So you do that, and for this, you need to cut your yarn because you're threading it through with a needle, right? But once you're done with that, you can just go all the way until it hits the edge. And once you're done with that, you don't need cut yarn anymore. Okay, so I'm going to use one of these that doesn't have cut yarn. That doesn't have any yarn in it. And I'm just going to kind of fold it up. Pardon me as I take my ruler. I thought I had a ruler here. I just need something. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to take my little straight edge ruler here. And I'm just going to kind of, because I cut so many at once, I maybe cut a little below where those lines were. But I'm just going to fold this up where all of my cuts are to kind of make my plate here, to make my basket, I mean. Okay, and you can see this is by no means is this, actually I don't even think I need this. By no means is this anywhere close to even or perfect. You can make it as even and perfect as you want. I did not make mine even and perfect. I'm probably going to then make a little video tutorial that will be a little more exact than this is, and just do a quick little post about it. But you want to just get them all folded up and then take your yarn with only one cut end. All right, I frogged something on here, so pardon me. You know what? I'm not going to stress about this. I'm going to cut it and deal with that mess later. All right. So now all you need to do is to get started, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make a slip knot around the yarn itself. So I'm just wrapping the yarn like over my hand, over some of my fingers to make a loop. And now I'm going to take the yarn and wrap it around itself. Okay. And so here the live yarn is back here, and here the cut end is back here, and the part wrapping over my hand is up here. And now I'm going to just pull this through so that I've tied a knot around itself. And that's just the little slip knot tied around the yarn. Okay, so I tied a little slip knot around the yarn. And now I'm going to take that and slide it onto one of these little guys. La la la. All right, that's all. And now I'm just going to weave around and around. And then as we're weaving around and around, we can chat away about what y'all are doing, what your plans are for, the holiday season, or what sort of fall crafting you're looking forward to. As you do this, I'm just kind of like catching that end in here as I go around, and at some point I'll clip it. But as you do this, if you pull it, if you're pulling it tight enough, everything will come up together and you'll end up with a little kind of bowl shape that you can put things in. You could do this where you make the bottom more square, and maybe I'll show some of those when I do the tutorial. Maybe I'll try doing some where the bottom is a little more square or rectangular or whatever. We'll play around a little bit with it, okay? And then that way you can kind of see what you want to do. I think it's probably easiest to tighten it if you go wrap in and then out and then kind of tighten, because it's easier to tighten on the outside than it is on the inside, because there's more room outside the basket than inside the basket, right? And it takes a few passes before it really starts to basket. All right, so this is just a really simple, fun little thing. And like I said, the center of it, I was doing that rose embroidery. So maybe we'll chat a little bit. You guys can let me know if there are any like fall, what you like to do with your yarn scraps for like fall crafts or whatever. And then we'll kind of answer any other questions or whatever you have. Rhonda Coleman 8527 says, great idea, thanks. You are welcome, and thank you. So yeah, I just think this is a fun little craft that I think a lot of the kids who are here for the holidays might enjoy. Maybe I'll get my kiddos to do this. My daughter is going to be home a week from tomorrow. Sarah says, hello, hello. So yeah, I know it depends on your universities, whatever. If you have kids in college, when they're coming home is varies. My daughter has the same crazy long holiday break that I had, which is from, well, okay, mine started like the day before Thanksgiving or something like that. But hers actually starts a week from tomorrow and goes all the way until the weekend after New Year's. So let's see. Monica, okay, Monique says, I never knew there were so many things you could create with a paper plate. There's really a lot you can do with these. And somehow, you know what? I think because we have 18-year-old twins, we have a whole lot of these paper plates because people bring them all the time when you have gatherings and stuff, or you buy them because you think you don't have them and then you did have them. You know, when you're having gatherings, a lot of times you don't want to have to do that many dishes. So paper plates are nice. And you know, they're I'm never too sure, like the amount of water it takes to wash a dish versus the biodegrading of a paper plate. I'm like, yeah, you know, well, it's kind of, I'm sure it's probably better to be using actual plates, but at least we do use the paper ones, not the plastic ones. And when we have something that we need a more hefty plate, we do usually get the more hefty ones. Your granddaughter has been taking your yarn scraps for her art projects. Exactly. So if you're on the Jessie at Home or Crochet Foundry newsletter, then you would have yesterday when you got your newsletter you would have seen that we did a bunch. I just shared a bunch of yarn crafts that you can do for Thanksgiving. They were kind of Thanksgiving themed yarn crafts. So there were some knit and crochet patterns that are Thanksgiving themed, shared in, like, you know, just links to everything. And then there were also, let me just put this over here. Then there were also links to a bunch of yarn crafts. I found some good roundups from other bloggers and such who had found various crafts to do. Some were yarny, some, I mean, they were all at least had some yarny crafts within the roundup. I don't think any of the roundups were entirely yarn themed, but they all had at least some yarn ones. Because I figure we all end up with all these yarn scraps, and it's fun to have something to do with them. Monica says that she saw the roundups, the suggestions in the newsletter. And also, Monica also says, I'm not very crafty. I'm not good at it. Maybe that's why I crochet. I think you are more crafty than I wouldn't say you're not very crafty. I mean, like, being able to crochet, I think definitely qualifies you as crafty. But yeah, so you're probably just not as into some of the other crafts or whatever. You know, some people really steer towards one specific craft and don't have a lot of interest in others, and then other people are just like, you know, you might have a main one or two crafts and then just love almost everything else. And then there are other people who just love everything. Like, I really love every kind of craft. I do lean to the fibery ones. But if there was nothing else to consider, if it was just like, I have free time and what am I going to do? I would do like every sort of craft imaginable. But when I have to actually, like, you know, make some money and stuff, I do really enjoy the designing and creating knit and crochet patterns, and there's an audience for it, and I'm good at it. So why not, right? So I don't know, it's just kind of, it's where I ended up. So yeah, you can see now we're starting to actually get a little bit of a base to our basket here, and it's coming out really nice. And I'm just kind of giving it a tug. I go inside the basket, then outside the basket, and then kind of give it a little pull, because like I said, it's a lot easier to pull from the outside of the basket than it is from the inside. And it's getting a little wider as we go around, and you control that by how straight these little pieces are. Remember, you need to have, all right, let's see, I'm getting a note that we're having problems streaming on Facebook. All right, so if you're on Facebook and you're having issues, I would recommend popping over to the Jessie at Home. YouTube is really the best place, and if not, you can also do the Crochet Foundry Instagram, but the Jessie at Home / Crochet Foundry YouTube is really the best place to watch this, and that is also where you will find the replays. If you're on YouTube and you search Jessie at Home, you should be able to find my videos, and it would be under live, and you'll be able to find the replays, especially if you want to like kind of go back to the beginning where I was kind of explaining what I was doing at the base of this one over here. So this is actually, it's going at a decent pace. We're getting up there, right? So let's see, we have some more comments. Monica says, if you saw my gingerbread house, you would agree with me. When Monica said she's not that crafty, she said, if I saw her gingerbread house, I would agree with her. Aw. So, yeah, well, you know, we've all, like I said, we've all got our various things. I happen to be one of those people who just like, crafting is my thing. I'll take a class on something I've never done before that's some sort of art or craft, and I always get asked by the teacher if I am a ringer, like somebody who already knew how to do this craft and just came in and took it. And you know, I usually just like, I just pick them up really fast. Sometimes I do take classes on something I already know how to do, just because a lot of times when I go somewhere and I take a class, it's like at a trade show or a conference or something. And if the classes are really inexpensive or if they're free, sometimes I'll take a class on something I already know how to do, because it'll be fun, it'll be relaxing, and because every time I take a class on something I already know, I still learn more. I get some really good tips, something I didn't know about before, or they do some technique I didn't know. I've taken embroidery classes and learned an embroidery class that I took is where I learned how to make this rose stitch that I didn't know how to do before. You know, and so you just, why not? If, you know, if they're free or inexpensive, if you have the ability to take them, I take them because they're fun and I enjoy them, and you never know what you're going to end up picking up, even if it's something you already know how to do, right? And you'll meet other people who have similar interests as you, so it's kind of fun. Monique says, I'm not so great at the crafts I've tried, but I enjoy trying. And you know what? That's totally fair. You don't have to be awesome at them. A lot of the point of crafting is the process of enjoying it, of having a good time. Monica says, has family members are really crafty and you envy them. The projects they make are so neat. You know, and sometimes it is about, you know, being crafty and having the skill. And then sometimes there are things that just aren't that difficult. It's just, you know, sitting down and doing them. So, I mean, this little guy is really coming together fast, and you know, you can see I'm going in and then out and then giving a little tug, making sure everything's slid down. And this is going to be a really cute little basket. All right. You can put, you know, if you have Thanksgiving candies for when you have your guests, you can put, some like pebbles or something in here, and some silk flowers. You can use it to hold pens or pencils or crochet hooks. I mean, really, you could do this to hold your crochet hooks. You could do this to hold your paintbrushes. You could do this to hold your pens and pencils. You know, you can make a shorter one and hold shorter things. Like I said, you can do it square. You could make something to hold, you know, your Post-it notes or whatever. So there's a lot of things you could do with it, and it's just using the paper base from the paper plate to have something to weave around and to give it the little bit of structure that you need. And then the yarn is making the pretty, right? So look at this. We're like more than half an inch up already, and it's actually really cute with this yarn. This is a I believe this is a Cascade. Yes, it's Cascade. It's Cherub Aran Weight color 603. This was in a designer box, so it's got the like regular, it's just a piece of paper with the name of what the yarn is printed on it and wrapped around it. It's not an actual yarn skein, but it's not an actual yarn cover, you know, but it's what they do sometimes when they send you the designer box, the yarns, the boxes of various yarns to try out. Sometimes they'll send them that way. Because it might be like a mill end or something. I don't know if it's like a mill end or if or what, like why it didn't actually have the tag yet. But yeah, it's yarn, so you can try it out, swatch with it, decide what you want to make with it, and then if you want more to do a design, you let them know. Let's see, we have more comments over here. Monica says she has done cross stitch, embroidery, and cake decoration and really enjoyed it. I really enjoy cross stitch and embroidery. Cake decoration, I don't know. It's funny. Like that's actually one of the ones that I don't enjoy as much. I think there's something about the consistency of it that it's just, it always feels like, I think it might be just because of what the other mediums I'm used to using. It feels like it's wrong, like it's too thick or it's too thin or the colors don't blend right. I don't know. I'm not all that great at cake decoration, and I also don't enjoy it as much. Like some things I'm not great at and I enjoy them, and some things I'm great at and I don't enjoy them. But cake decoration and skiing, I'm not great at and I don't enjoy them. Well, I don't not enjoy cake decoration. I just, it wouldn't be something I would choose to do most times. I did try, one year we had, when my niece by choice, Katie Temple, it was like during exam weeks for Columbia. And so right after all of her exams, we had her over one day, and I had some like fondant samples from Satin Ice, who is a cake decorating kind of company. And we were trying them out. So I baked, like, I do enjoy baking. But I had baked like a 4-layer cake or something and done the preliminary icing and everything on it. And then we turned it into, the kids and Katie and I turned it into a unicorn cake. And it was a lot of fun. There's actually a post about it on the blog. And we did have a lot of fun, but I think the reason, like in that situation, the fun that I had was more the company than the craft. But I do have to say, like, it was actually really good. The products we were using were really good products. They were good quality. The Satin Ice fondant, you know, it was still fresh enough. It wasn't like it hadn't been sitting around for a long time. It was still fresh enough, and it was good quality, and I definitely think the fondant I'm better at than just icing, because it's more like clay. All right, let's see. I'm just like chatting away here because we're talking about cakes. All right, so Monique says, must practice a great deal of patience when it comes to cake decoration. Definitely. Monique loves art and fiber arts. And also, Monique says, it's incredible what you can do to cakes. I'm good at eating the cake personally. Yes, totally. The eating part of the cake decoration is, I do believe, my favorite part. That might also be part of the reason why I'm not as fond of cake decoration, is I don't actually really like the icing on cake most of the time. I love carrot cake and I love cream cheese icing, but usually most icings I just find way too sweet. Monica says she makes all the kids their birthday cakes, and that's where she learned to fancy them up. See, my husband does all the birthday cakes and everything, and so, because it's like one thing I don't enjoy, and he started doing it, and just he has a blast with it. Every year he has so much fun. It's become his thing, and I absolutely love it. I love it because it's really cute to see him get excited about it, and I love it because I don't have to do it. So, all right. Well, Dory is over in Instagram and says hello. All right, and oh, I should remind you today our sit and stitch is from 7 to 9. Let me see if I have I may have the QR code for the 7 to 9. I do. Okay. So that QR code up, come on, where'd my mouse go? Okay, the QR code up here, I'm realizing you can't see my mouse. So the QR code right there is for tonight's sit and stitch, which is from 7 to 9 Eastern. It is currently 12:30 Eastern. So 6.5 hours from now would be when it is. So it is 12:30 Eastern right now. The sit and stitch is in 6.5 hours from 7 to 9 Eastern. That is the link. You can click on it now, even though it's not 7 o'clock yet. You can click on it now and you can just sign up and you'll be able to like get the link and show up when it's time. Okay. So that is what that is. Let me see. Wrong button and comments because there's more. Oh, Monique says, hi, Dory. I think you're on different platforms, but there we go. So, I mean, look at this. This is going really fast, okay? So for those of you who missed the beginning, I'll kind of go back to, I'll tell you again what I did. I took this paper plate, right? I took a paper plate. I found the center and I marked the center. You can see what I did there. And then I divided the outside circumference evenly. I divided it up into an odd number. So in order to do it, rather than trying to measure around, I counted how many of the little divots there were. Like first, I ironed the plate flat. And you know how it has these little like ruffles on it? They basically flatten out. I counted how many there were. And then I divided it by 9. And I put a little mark on each one of those spots. Okay, so I marked the center, and then I had 9 other marks on the outside that were evenly spaced around. And then I connected those 9 spots on the outside to the center, stopping them when they were 3 inches down. So you can see how my cuts only go down to 3 inches. So my marks were like right in the center of where these things are cut. So I connected that mark to the center dot. And then I just drew the line down to 3 inches and then put a little hash mark there. So I knew that's where I was stopping and stopped. Okay. And then I decided how much of an angle I want my little plate thingy, my little bowl to have. And I decided I didn't want it to have that much of an angle. If you want it to be completely straight up and down, then when you do these little marks here, okay, there was a mark here and a mark here. You measure how far apart this is. And if this is exactly 1 inch apart, then you go straight up so that the top is exactly 1 inch apart. If you want it to be angled, then like this one, what I'm doing right now, I think it's about 1 inch apart here, and it's about 1.5 inches apart here, which means my little bowl is going to start to get a little bigger as I go up. If I had made this top like 1.5 inches or 2 inches, then it would be more of a bowl than a basket. Like this is kind of like a round basket. But if I had made the top sections, if I had made them like 2 inches wide, then obviously that would mean that the top has a larger circumference, and it would spread out more. You could even get fancy, and you could totally get fancy pants. Here, I'll draw a little fancy pants line on here. Okay, so you see what I did? If I did that, then what would happen is if I cut them out like that, then what would happen is as I got to this part where it's smaller than here, my little piece would fold in kind of like a vase, and then as it starts to come out, it would come out wider. So I could have gone out, I could even here, like if at this point, if I'd gone straight up to here and then started making them wider, then my little basket would flare out, right? It's too late now, I already cut it. But if they were wider, if I, rather than doing like a straight line from here to 2.5 inches, you know, so that it evenly grows, I could have gone straight up for a little bit. You know, I could have gone like straight up for a little bit and then flared out, and my basket would go straight up and then flare. So you can do all sorts of really cool, fun little shapes by doing those things. Okay. And maybe I'll, when I make the little video tutorial, the tutorial for the blog, maybe I'll try a couple of those little shapes or something. I don't know. I've got a whole lot of these paper plates, and why not, right? A lot of paper plates, a lot of fall color yarns. And this is a DK, I would say. Oh, and actually it says Aran. It says Cherub Aran weight, but it's definitely a light Aran. Okay, so it just depends. You can use different weights of yarn, and obviously it's just going to give you a different look. And you could also do this with your scrap yarns, and just, I mean, that's when it's really great with the kids, is you just use your scrap yarns. I know Monica was saying that her grandkids swipe her scraps of yarn. This is a perfect little craft to do with those scraps of yarn. So, Monica, next time you're watching your grandkids, you can, you know, do this. You can even show up with some pre-cut plates or whatever if you want to. And you can do this, and they can just wrap around. You don't have to do the fancy bottom. Okay, they can cut a piece of fabric to put on the bottom. Okay, so for the bottom, there's some couple options. You could cut a piece of fabric. I would recommend doing the bottom before you wrap your yarn. Okay, before you wrap your basket, because it's so much easier to get to the bottom when you don't have to go inside your basket, right? So you could just cut a piece of fabric and put it there. You could leave it as it is. You could cut a decorative piece of scrapbook paper, whatever you want to put down here. You could put a piece of felt down here. I would say on the bottom of it, you would want to put a piece of felt or something on the bottom, just in case, you know, if you're putting on a table and the table's a little wet, something to absorb that water that isn't the paper. So I had, for this piece, what I did was I poked the hole in the center, and I'm doing an embroidery rose. Okay. And what I did was I sewed from the center hole. Okay, there's a center hole right there. So I sewed from the center hole around each of these little spikes here, so that I got 7 spokes. Okay, so I have 7 spokes here. I'm sorry, 9 spokes here. I forgot how many. And now I'm just weaving around and around, under, over, under, over, under, over. And because there is an uneven number of spokes, you know, right now when I'm getting to this spoke, I'm going to go over it. But as I go around, the next time I get to it, I'll be going under it. And that's why you need an uneven number of spokes. So thankfully for this stitch, and because it's all weaving, for this stitch and for weaving the outside, what you need, see here I am about to go over that spoke again before I went under it. Now I'm going over it. Since it's all weaving, it needs to be an uneven number, so that on one pass you go over, and on the next pass you go under, and then you go over, and then you go under. That's the only way weaving works. Weaving doesn't work if every time you hit the same spoke or whatever, you're always going over or you're always going under. So you have to alternate. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm getting this fun little rose pattern going on in the center. Okay, so you can see it grow, and if you pull it tight, it starts to give it, the little rose, a little bit more puffiness. So, you know, be aware that you can pull it tight and make it puffier, which might be something that you want, and it might not be something that you want. If you want it to lay really nice and flat, you have to make sure you don't over pull. Okay, so I've got this going on. And that is how I'm doing the bottom of this basket. Right. Now, if you later decide that, oh, you know what, I want to make it wider, You can always glue on more pieces. Like you can take another paper plate or just a piece of cardstock and just glue it onto the little tabs to make a wider one. But I would only do that if like you had already done the entire center and then changed your mind and you had already spent a decent amount of time on it, because, you know, paper plates, they're not that expensive, and they are, if you haven't put any food on them yet, they're still totally recyclable, right? Um, and, you know, hey, you can always just use that one for another basket, or let, you know, a kid finish that basket or whatever. But if you're doing something where you want it to get really, really wide, like you could leave this whole thing flat and just do the straight lines, and you could just weave the plate. Like you could just take the plate the way it is, and you can take the plate the way it is, just do like the center rows out to like an inch or so, like, well, that would be like 2 inches, right? And then have the slices in it, and then weave around and just weave yourself a flat plate if that's what you want. You know, whatever makes you happy. That would be really cute for using as a placemat. So you could actually make a placemat. Excuse me, you could make a placemat that way by just, you know, you'd find your center and you divide the outside evenly into an you want it evenly spaced but an uneven number of lines that you're going to cut, and I would trace those lines down so that each one ends about an inch away from the center. Okay, so that'll give you the radius of 1 inch and a diameter of 2 inches, right? But I'd make sure that you have at least that 2-inch diameter circle in the center. I wouldn't want it to cut all the way towards to the center. And then on the inside, on that inner circle, you could do a stitch like this, which is, it's just weaving. It's the same thing as you're going to do out here. It's just sitting on top of the plate instead of wrapping around the plate. And then when you get to the edge of this section, is when you get to the end of this section and you just have the slits in the plate, you would keep on doing the weaving, and you would have a flat one, and that flat one would be would make a really nice little placemat. Okay, and then if you wanted to continue that out bigger, you would need to glue more strips onto it if your paper plate wasn't as big as you wanted your placemat to be. Or you could just, you know, get really fancy and start crocheting or knitting onto the edge of that placemat if that's what you want to do, right? And it's just important to keep in mind that the center of this is paper, though. Okay, so whatever you make with it, remember that the inside of this is paper and the inside of it is giving it structure. So it's not like if it gets all wet and the paper crumbles, your piece will crumble too, because that's what's giving it the structure. It's not like when you have the wash away, you know, embroidery design, and when you're done doing it, you can wash the embroidery, you can wash away the little stick and stitch sticker, and everything is hunky-dory. In this case, if it gets really wet and the paper disintegrates, you're going to lose the structure of your piece. So whatever you're making, it's important to keep in mind that the structure of it is paper. Right? This is meant to be a craft that, you know, it's not, this craft is not meant to have an incredibly long lifespan. Sure, if you know, make we'll go back to this one. If you're making this and you're using it as a pencil holder or whatever, yeah, you know, it'll last pretty darn long, you know. But if you end up accidentally spilling your coffee next to it and it gets wet, things might not go so well. You can't wash it either, because then it's going to get more wet and disintegrate more. Monique says, so no water. No, it's not watertight, and water would not be good. Now that does not mean you can't make a coaster out of it. You could use it. You could do like make it 1/2 inch tall to make a coaster. if you did this little thing on both like the top and the bottom of it, so the paper was just stuck in the middle, but it would eventually, like, it would work as a coaster unless somebody really spilled and it got really, really wet. A little bit of condensation is probably not going to go enough through the yarn to get to the paper and to cause serious damage or anything like that. But yeah, it's got a paper core, and the paper is what's giving it its structure. So now you can take these ideas and do the exact same thing with a cardstock, with cardboard, with bookboard. You could do it with wood. You can, I mean, this is how you weave, right? I have actual weaving reed. You could, and I keep saying I need to make a little tutorial where you're using the weaving reed for the inside pieces, but still using yarn to do the actual weaving, because then it is a more permanent piece, right? The yarn is doing the weaving, but the structure is coming from the reed, and that would totally work. Okay, and it's the same idea. So that would be a really cute thing to do. Now I like, with the weaving reed, I like that I like when I can see it. And so if you did this, you wouldn't be able to see it. But if you did this with like a bunch of like just maybe a row of chain, but really more like a foundation, like a half double crochet or double crochet foundation stitch, or just like a big row of like one single row of double crochet or something, and wove that in and out, then you'd be able to see the reed under it. And there are also different kind of weaving patterns you can make. This is just a basic over under pattern, but you can do different patterns, especially when you have straight edges. It's easier to do different patterns where like you go under 2 over 1, under 2 over 1. You know, there's all sorts of different patterns you can make, but when you're doing something like this that's round, obviously the more you, like if I were to skip a couple of them, my yarn would cut across. So you have to keep those sorts of things in mind. Monique says she's going to ask what people used back long ago. Yeah, so there are grasses, like a lot of those like absolutely gorgeous African like plates and bowls and everything you see. Those are different kinds of reeds and grasses and stuff. So I know when I was in Ireland and we were at a bog, we I can't remember what the name, the tour guide told us what the name of the one kind of reedy plant was that we picked, but she was like, anyone who wants to learn how to make a St. Bridget cross, you know, grab a bunch of this reed, and we'll make it back at the hotel. So we, I grabbed a bunch of the reed, and when we went back to the hotel, we made a St. Bridget cross. And that was just like a very round, like 1/8 inch at the most in diameter reed. But yeah, grasses, all sorts of things, whatever is available, botanically. It all depended on the nature that was around them as to what they would use. But nowadays you can buy basket making supplies, and it's, they're called reed. It's called reed, but it's really kind of, I feel like it's like split, like, I don't know if it's bamboo or rattan or what, but yeah, there's different materials, but you can still buy it. I've got tons of baskets that I've made from when I do medieval events, and I've taken classes and everything, and they're fun. So now also, like, as you're going along, if you decide you're done, there's a couple options. What I like to do is what I like to do is find my scissors that I had, like, here we go. Like, it wasn't all that long ago that I had a pair of scissors. Okay, find my scissors. I cut that off. I'm gonna grab a different needle since the needle I had is attached to something. And I am just going to take this needle and I'm just going to go kind of around the next piece. Okay, I'm going kind of under the next piece. There we go. And so that gives me a little loop. And I'm just going to kind of tie it, pull through the loop, and then go to the inside and just weave it down through some of that, like just kind of hide it underneath a bunch and try to get the needle out without causing drama. Okay, so I just pulled it through a bunch of that, and then I can clip that again with the scissors. All right, so I'm going to clip that, and then I'm going to clip this piece. I know that it's kind of been in and out a few times, so I just clipped the piece that was right there. All right, now I'm going to kind of point this. All right. And I'm going to fold it. And then what I'm going to do is kind of skip the very top piece of yarn and try to slide it underneath the next piece of yarn and just slide it underneath all of that, which is sometimes a lot easier said than done. Hold on. Ah, it's coming back out again. Okay, so it kind of came out on the inside there, and so I just went with it and pulled it from there. Now you can either just kind of push that flat, or if it bothers you, you can take your scissors and cut that little tip. But yeah, I'm just going to keep on kind of cutting these into points. And then fold it over to the inside. Oopsie. Okay. And then you skip the top piece of yarn and start and try to push it under, starting with the next piece of yarn. And just get it under there. And again, it's probably going to pop out, and when it does, you can just go with it if you want, or you can clip it later, whatever floats your boat. And your other option is you can always, another one that I will sometimes like to do, and you know, maybe that's what I'll end up doing with this one, is you can kind of fold it, cut it all to like an even maybe 1/4 inch above the top, and then fold it down. And so you kind of want to fold one in and one out depending on which piece it is. Okay, so I'm folding every other one in, every other one out. And then what I'll do is take a piece of like decorative scrap paper that's maybe, and I'll cut like an inch strip in it, okay, out of it. So let's see, do I have, well, we'll pretend this is a piece of decorative scrap paper, all right? So we'll take this and you take a piece that's like 3/4 to an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch wide. You fold it in half, and then you can put it over top. La la la. All right. There, and just like use some double stick tape or some glue or something to give it a little top piece like that. Okay. So, there's a couple different ways to end this. All right. So there you go. Just a silly, fun little yarny craft. So that's it. I know today wasn't the normal lunch with Jessie kind of day, but it just seemed like a good, fun thing to do. I've been super, super stressed lately, and I just needed something that wasn't a whole lot of brain power today. We all have those days, right? And it's totally cool to have those days. Totally allowed for everybody, not just me. When you need a note, my son came home yesterday, and he was like, I was gonna talk to them about. I was gonna go to this, specific office and talk to them about something, but I'm gonna do it tomorrow. He's like, because after class today, I just couldn't brain anymore. And I'm like, that's totally fair. I'm like, as long as you actually do it tomorrow, because, it needed to be done by the end of the week. I'm like, as long as you actually do it tomorrow, it's totally fair. Sometimes you just have a day where you can't brain. Today is definitely one of those days where I just was not in the mood to brain, and I just wanted to do something fun. So Monique says it's cute, and Monica says, I know what you're making on Thanksgiving. All right, guys, thanks for joining, and have a wonderful week. And remember, tonight, this is the QR code that you can go ahead and click on to now to get the link for our sit and stitch, which is tonight from 7 to 9 Eastern. It is currently 1 Eastern, so that is 6 hours from now. So hopefully I will see a bunch of you in 6 hours. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.